Welcome to Fun Theory. Today we're asking something kind of intriguing. Why do we willingly watch things designed to scare us?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? Given our basic instinct is, well, to avoid danger.
Exactly. But horror films are incredibly popular, so, what's going on there? Why seek out fear? That's what we're exploring through the lens of Fun Theory.
It's a great question for fun theory, and the appeal spans decades, really. We've looked into several ideas, several perspectives on why we find this kind of on-screen fright. Well, fun.
Let's start with maybe an evolutionary perspective. There's this idea that our ancestors needed constant vigilance against threats, right?
That shaped our brains,
Yeah.
leaving us with pretty sensitive threat detection systems.
So horror movies, by showing us things like, I don't know, alien invasions, masked killers, post-apocalyptic worlds, they tap into that system.
They simulate threats, yes. But crucially, they do it while we're safe on our couch.
Right.
It's like activating the system without the actual risk. That's a key part of the fun theory angle here.
It makes sense. We get the physiological response, the alertness.
The fight or flight kicking in, even mildly. But because real threats are, thankfully, less common for many of us now, these movies offer a way to engage that old wiring.
A sort of risk-free rehearsal?
You could call it that.
Yeah.
And it underlines something important for fun theory.
Yeah.
Things that seem threatening naturally grab our attention.
Deeply. And maybe there's a payoff afterwards, like you feel a sense of accomplishment for having sat through it.
That's definitely part of it. A sense of mastery, perhaps. You've endured the fright, the suspense, and you come out the other side.
Which could maybe even boost your confidence a little in handling real-life stress. An interesting fun theory outcome.
It potentially could. Feeling like you've survived the movie monster might translate, psychologically, into feeling a bit more capable when facing, say, everyday anxieties. It builds a type of resilience, which fits right into how fun theory examines challenging experiences.
Okay, so that's one angle. What about psychological theories? I know there's one called excitation transfer theory.
Yes, that one's been around since the 70s. It's quite influential in fun theory discussions about emotion.
And the idea is,
The basic idea is that the negative feelings built up during the scary parts, the fear, the tension, don't just disappear when the threat is gone.
they linger.
They linger,
Mhm.
and then they get sort of transferred or misattributed to the positive feeling of relief at the end.
Yeah.
So the fear actually intensifies the final euphoria.
I see. So the bad feelings make the good feelings feel even better. A core fun theory concept, really, finding enjoyment in that contrast.
Precisely. That swing from negative to positive is amplified. There was even a more recent study, I think 2017, looking at a survival horror game, DayZ.
With permadeath, right, where if your character dies, they're gone for good.
Exactly. And the study suggested that the intense anxiety about losing everything actually boosted the player's enjoyment when they did survive. It supports that excitation transfer idea within fun theory.
That makes sense. But then there's,
Yeah.
well, a slightly darker idea. Morbid curiosity. Does fun theory touch on our fascination with death and the darker side of things?
It certainly does. Some research suggests that a fascination with death, with terror, with the macabre, is a factor for some people.
So people higher in morbid curiosity are more likely to be horror fans.
The findings point that way, yes. And interestingly, they often report being less scared afterwards, and sometimes prefer watching alone. It's like horror provides a safe space to explore evil, to grapple with humanity's dark potential.
Exploring the shadows without getting hurt. That definitely fits the fun theory framework of confronting challenging ideas safely. But obviously, not everyone enjoys this. What makes some people love horror and others hate it, according to fun theory.
Personality plays a huge role. Think about sensation seekers.
People who crave novel or intense experiences, risk takers.
Exactly. For them, the intense stimulation of a horror movie, the jump scares, the suspense, is inherently rewarding. They actually get positive feelings from high arousal experiences, even ones most people find negative.
So they're sort of wired to find the fun in the fear itself, within their personal fun theory.
You could say that. They embrace the jolt. Then there's empathy.
How does empathy fit into the fun theory of horror?
Well, one theory suggests people with lower empathy might enjoy horror more because they're less distressed by seeing characters suffer on screen.
But is it that simple?
It's complex. Some argue that how we empathize with fictional characters isn't necessarily the same as our real-world empathy. So it's an area fun theory is still unpacking.
An important distinction. It's not necessarily a lack of empathy overall. What about sex differences? Fun theory often looks at demographic patterns.
Yes, sex is actually one of the stronger predictors here. Generally speaking, males report enjoying scary and violent movies more than females do.
Any ideas why?
A couple of potential reasons are often cited. Females, on average, tend to report higher levels of fear and anxiety in response to frightening stimuli. Also, potentially higher disgust sensitivity.
Ah, so the blood and gore might be more off-putting, less fun in the fun theory sense.
Potentially, yes. It points to maybe different ways of processing these intense stimuli, which is fascinating for fun theory. But shifting gears slightly, some research is actually looking at horror therapeutically.
As therapy, how does that work within fun theory?
It's an emerging area. The idea is that engaging with controlled fear might have benefits for anxiety or even trauma.
Really? Is there evidence for that?
There was one study during the early COVID-19 pandemic. It found that people who regularly watched horror films seemed to report less psychological distress,
Interesting.
and fans of apocalyptic horror specifically felt, subjectively, more prepared for the pandemic reality.
Wow. So facing fictional disasters might build coping skills for real ones. That's a core fun theory paradox, finding benefit in simulated negativity.
That's a hypothesis, that consuming horror helps develop coping mechanisms. It's a bit like exposure therapy, where you gradually face fears in a safe setting to build resilience, finding the fun or the utility in that controlled exposure.
But presumably, this only works if you already kind of enjoy horror, right? Forcing someone who hates it probably isn't therapeutic within their fun theory.
Almost certainly, it's likely most beneficial for those already drawn to the genre. Now, we should probably touch on the brain itself, the neurobiology. What's happening up there when we watch something scary? How does that inform fun theory?
Right, the actual mechanics of the fear response.
Well, we know horror movies activate the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight response.
So increased heart rate, faster breathing, feeling alert.
Exactly. And brain scans show heightened activity in areas involved in emotion regulation and processing sensory information like the anterior cingulate cortex, the thalamus, visual areas, all firing up.
Our body and brain are reacting like it's real, even though we know it isn't. That physical response must be part of the fun for some, according to fun theory.
It seems to be. And crucially, the amygdala, the brain's sort of fear hub or alarm system, gets activated by threat signals in the movie.
And does that vary between people?
The thinking is yes. Someone with a more reactive amygdala might actually experience that activation as part of the thrill, part of the enjoyment. The intensity of the fun might correlate with how strongly their amygdala fires up.
So some brains might just find that fear response inherently more rewarding. Which brings us back to the core fun theory question. Why seek out fear? We've touched on evolution.
Yes, the idea that ancient threats, like spiders, still trigger fear because it's evolutionarily baked in, even if most spiders today aren't dangerous. That primal response gets activated safely.
And we talked about excitation transfer, the fear, boosting the final relief, making it fun. What about gratification theory and personality again? Maybe pulling those threads together for fun theory.
Right, so gratification theory looks at what needs horror meets. For sensation seekers, it meets the need for intense arousal, for that jolt that's their fun, but it also incorporates empathy levels, lower empathy potentially making it easier to enjoy, and curiosity.
Including morbid curiosity, which you mentioned.
Yes, and morbid curiosity itself seems linked to sensation seeking. It's all interconnected. And some research even links enjoyment of horror to darker personality traits like sadism or psychopathy, though that's a complex and sensitive area within fun theory.
Definitely complex. Okay, one last theory. The benign masochism hypothesis. That sounds intriguing for fun theory.
It is. The idea here is that watching horror might be adaptive in a different way. It suggests we might be deliberately engaging with negative feelings in a safe space as a way to, well, prepare for real life.
Prepare how?
By rehearsing strong emotions. Experiencing fear, sadness, maybe even despair vicariously through the film allows us to practice managing those feelings. So when we face difficult situations in reality, a breakup, a loss, an accident, we might be slightly more resilient because we've explored those emotional states before, safely, finding the fun in that emotional practice.
Like an emotional workout, that puts a whole different spin on fun theory and horror.
It does. It suggests a deeper purpose, perhaps, beyond just the thrill.
So, putting it all together for fun theory, it seems there's no single answer. It's evolutionary echoes, it's brain chemistry, thrill-seeking, curiosity, maybe even emotional practice.
Absolutely. It's a mix of things. Vicarious experience, excitation transfer, morbid curiosity, personality traits like sensation-seeking and empathy levels, maybe even therapeutic aspects, and it's all highly subjective.
Your personal fun theory around horror depends on your own wiring, your personality, how you process fear and excitement.
Exactly. What one person finds terrifyingly fun, another finds just terrifying.
So maybe the question for you, the listener, through this fun theory lens is, what's your relationship with fear? Does your taste or distaste for horror say something about your own personal search for fun or managed challenges? Perhaps there's more to explore there in the psychology behind the scares.